Part of your homework is going to ask you to determine what quadrant an angle is. So I want to do a quick review over the quadrants. This is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. And many of you may already know that. If you're asked to determine, let's just say you're determine what quadrant 5 pi over 4 would be in. Well, first of all, I would think about, is this one complete rotation? What would make a rotation? What would make a half a rotation? If it was 4 pi over 4, that would be 1 pi. This is 1 pi, this is 0, this is a half of pi, and this is 3 pi over 2. Well, 4 pi over 4 would be 1 pi. So since it's 5 pi over 4, it would be somewhere here in the third quadrant, because it's not quite pi and a half of another pi is what this would be. So if it was pi and a half another pi, this would be 6 pi over 4. Let's say you were asked to find pi over 7. Well, here's pi, and a seventh of that, well, half of it would be 3 1/2, so 1 over 7 would be somewhere in quadrant 1. You're also going to be asked to sketch some angles in standard position. These can be pretty vague. They don't have to be perfect. Let's say I'm asked to sketch this one that I had, pi over 7. Well, I know 7 pi over 7 would be right here because that's 1 pi. So this would be 7 pi over 7. This would be half of that. So 1 pi over 7 would be something like this. So I would just say this is pi over 7. Let's say I was asked to do negative 2 pi over 3. Well, since it's negative, I know it's got to go the other direction. And if it was negative 3 pi over 3 would be 1 pi. So 2 pi over 3 would be somewhere in here. So if I was sketching that angle, I would draw it to look like that. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be in the general position. What if I was asked to do something like 5 pi? We haven't talked about that one. But I know that pi is 180 degrees. So there would be 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi. So that would be an angle that would be 5 pi units. What if I was asked to do one that was 2 radians? So this time it's not in terms of pi, it's just in terms of radians. Let's think about how many radians are in our circle. If I'm talking about radians, this is 3.14 radians. This is 6.28 radians if I go all the way around. This would be half of that, so 1.7-ish something. So if I'm asked to do 2 radians, it's going to be somewhere in here. So there would be an angle measure that is 2 radians.